All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to day number 2 of 8th grade U.S. history. All right. I know that some of you had some issues day number 1, like getting online, getting connected, making sure your password was up to date. If you haven't done the first day's activity, all looking at sources and what makes a source credible, I want you to go back and do that one first before we talk about this video on contextualization, a thing called contextualization. All right. But today's activity is going to be very similar to that on Monday, and the fact that we're looking at kind of the same sources, and we'll be looking at these same sources all week. We're just going to look at them in a slightly different way. And really what I'm trying to get you to do is become a historical thinker. There's a thing called historical thinking, and the activities that we're doing is getting you set up to kind of become a historical thinker. All right. And today we're going to look at a slightly different question than we looked at on Monday. On Monday, we were looking at how do we know if we can trust a source? How do we know if a source is credible? Today, we're going to look at how can context affect information given in a source? There's this idea of what's called context. All right. So today's main question is how can context affect the information in a source? All right. And what this means, context, is just situations going on at the time a source is created. Okay, so situations going on kind of at the time a source is created. So if we're reading like a historical document, we have to we have to kind of like in our minds go back to the time this source was created and ask ourselves, how could what was going on when this source was created affect what this source actually says? All right, so I'm going to give you a quick example right here. A lot of times there's people that ask, all right, who is the best president in the United States history? And you can actually there's this thing called C-SPAN, and they're a network that they do a whole bunch of stuff with like government, and they send out a whole bunch of questions to a whole bunch of different types of people and ask, who is the best president? They've done this in 2000, 2007, 2009. And all three of 2007, 2019, is when this last one was. Okay, so just recently. And a majority of people who voted on this actually choose this dude right here, Abraham Lincoln, as the best president. A lot of people consider him to be the best president. And you want to know what? There's a lot of reasons why Abraham Lincoln was a great president. A lot of people say like Abraham Lincoln's the best president because he was the president during the Civil War, where the United States won the Civil War, where we completely got rid of slavery. All right. So if we look at Abraham Lincoln, he's this guy that is oftentimes seen as this dude that got rid of slavery. And I would say that that's probably pretty true. He was the United States president at the time where we fought in the Civil War to get rid of slavery. And he's got some really awesome quotes about that. So like one quote was he actually signed a law that made slavery illegal in the United States. So he has a quote as saying, as of September 22nd, 1862, I've issued a law that makes it so all people who were slaves in the United States are now free and will forever be free. So he's getting rid of slavery in the United States. That's a pretty important thing. And that would make him a pretty great president. I would agree. All right. He's also quoted another time as saying like, okay, why'd you get rid of slavery? And what he said was anybody that takes away the freedom of another person deserves no freedom for themselves. So essentially, if you make somebody a slave and take away their freedom, you don't deserve any freedom otherwise. Those are two pretty great quotes from Abraham Lincoln. And those are probably some reasons why he's often considered the best president. But I want to bring you to this right here. And I'm not even going to tell you who said it. I bet you can maybe start to figure this out. But here's another quote of an individual that said something. And this quote says, I will say that I am not and have never been in favor of equality between the white and black races. So essentially saying like, I don't believe white people and black people are equal. There's a physical difference between white and black races, which I believe will never allow blacks and whites to live equally together. So essentially like black people and white people are different and they can never live together. I forever want the white race to be considered dominant. So this person's saying, I want like white people to be considered dominant over black people. That right there, if I were to just ask you, I were to ask somebody on the street who said this, I bet what they would say is, I don't know, some racist person was the one that said this right here. And I would agree. This sounds like somebody that is very racist who says white people are better than black people. White people and black people are different. All right. Here's the only issue. Who said this? Actually, this dude right here. Abraham Lincoln is the one that said this. And now I know a bunch of you are going to be like thinking, oh my God, I thought that Abraham Lincoln was this dude that got rid of slavery, and a lot of people say that he's the best president. How could the best president ever say something so racist as this? And what I would say is, yeah, he definitely said all of this racist stuff, but maybe understanding why and when he said this makes a little bit more sense. So, Abraham Lincoln said this quote right here, and it's the same quote that I just read. He essentially said this racist quote when he was running to try to become president of the United States. And what he did was he was in a state that still had slavery. I think he was in like South Carolina. They still had slavery at the time. And he was trying to get people to elect him to become president. So somebody essentially asked him in that state, said, hey, and this might have even been somebody that owned slaves at the time. Hey, what do you think about white people and black people? And Abraham Lincoln said this. All right. And now I'm not saying that that makes it right what he said, because what he said was absolutely not right in any way, shape, or form. But understanding the context of he said this when he was trying to be elected, and then once he actually became president, he said these sort of things, maybe makes a little bit more sense in our mind as to why Abraham Lincoln would say something like this. Well, he was trying to get elected. That's why he said these things. These are the things that he said once he actually became president, right? But that just goes to show you, even people that are considered to be like the best president still said some pretty racist stuff. Not good. So the context here is these are the things that Abraham Lincoln said. A lot of people think that he's one of the best presidents because honestly, most of the things that he said when he was actually president ended up being pretty awesome in terms of like him saying that people are equal, people need to have freedom, and that means every person needs to have freedom, like whites, blacks, whatever color of your skin. However, when he was running for election, he said some pretty racist stuff. All right, so here's what we're going to be doing now. We're going to be getting back to the scenario that we looked at on Monday. And remember, the scenario is you're the principal of a school, and on September 7th, 2018, there was a fight in the lunchroom. You have a compiled list of sources speaking about the fight. Your job today is to determine how the context has affected what those sources have to say. All right, so I'm going to give you an example right here. Remember, context is the situation going on at the time a source is created. And context can change what a source has to say. For example, when Abraham Lincoln is trying to get voted into, get elected, he said a pretty racist thing in a state that allowed slavery because he wanted people in that state to vote for him. Once he actually becomes president, he backs off of those racist things and does some pretty awesome things. But maybe that makes Abraham Lincoln not the best person. I'll kind of let you be the judge of that. But the context situation is going on at the time the source is created. So what we're going to be doing here is on the Google Doc that you are going to be looking at, I'm essentially going to ask you a series of 3 questions to determine the context of what's going on. All right. The first question is you've got to figure out with all of these sources, does this person have a relationship with Justin or Max? And could this relationship affect what they might have to say? So let's look at this example right here. This is the phone interview that you have with Jess Smith. All right. And Jeff is Justin's father. So the question is, does this source have a relationship with anyone in the fight? Could this relationship affect what they have to say? I want you to think about this. If you're talking to somebody who is the dad of somebody who is just in a fight, how might that affect what they have to say? What I would say is this. Justin's dad may try to protect Justin in a fight. Just think about this. If you get in a fight, maybe you have the type of parent that would say, no, if you get in a fight, it's 100% your fault. There's many parents out there, though, that would try to protect their son who was just in a fight. So that's something to just keep in the back of your mind. If you know this is Justin's dad, you might not fully trust what this person has to say. All right. So now the next question is, does this source blame anyone for starting the fight? And what I've done here is I've highlighted some places where Justin's dad says, well, I feel like some of this fight is actually my fault. I just moved into town and I had to lay off quite a few people down at the factory. So he essentially fired a whole bunch of people. And then he goes on to say, Justin really isn't the type to start a fight without having really been angered by someone else. So he's kind of saying, like, I think this is my fault. It's not Justin's fault. Justin wouldn't fight anybody anyways unless somebody really, really angered him. All right. So what I would say here, does this person blame anyone? Well, yeah, like he blames himself a little bit, but he doesn't really blame Justin. So if you're the principal trying to figure out what happened in a fight between Justin and Max, what Justin's dad says probably like gives you some insight as to what might happen, but can you necessarily trust Justin's dad when he says Justin would never start a fight? I think the answer is no. So when we look at this question, all right, does this person's relationship with Justin or Max affect what they have to say about the fight? What I would say is absolutely. Since Jeff is Justin's dad, it seems like he's trying to protect Justin here. For example, he blames himself in the fight and states that Justin would never start a fight with having been angered by someone else. All right. So we got to essentially look at, do they have a relationship with anybody that was in the fight? Do they blame anyone for starting the fight? And then does this person's relationship affect what they have to say? All right, so this is the example that I have going right here. Once you get over here, the next thing is for you to get onto this Google Doc, and I'll explain a little bit more in the video directions right there. Thanks.